My wife became her rich boss's surrogate for $500,000, saying, "My body, my choice." Now the deal blew up and she's begging me to help. Not my baby, not my problem. My wife insisted on carrying her rich boss's baby for $500,000, telling me, "My body, my choice." I warned her that bringing another man's child into our marriage, boss or not, was a boundary I couldn't cross. She ignored me, signed the contract, and did it anyway. Fast forward to today. Her boss's marriage blew up, he backed out of the deal, and now she and her entire family are begging me to save them from financial ruin. But I made my position very clear. Not my baby, not my problem. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's story is a complete nightmare, and honestly, I'm posting this here because I need to vent and figure out if I'm totally out of line for standing my ground. To give you some background, my wife, Sarah, 31F, and I, 33M, have been married for 4 years, together for 7. Up until about 10 months ago, I thought we had a solid, healthy marriage. We had good communication, shared goals, and we're even talking about starting our own family in a year or two. We both work. I'm a software engineer, and Sarah works as an executive assistant for a high-profile real estate developer. Let's call him Richard, 48M. Richard is extraordinarily wealthy, the kind of rich where buying a yacht on a Tuesday doesn't even dent his bank account. Sarah always talked about how professional and generous he was as an employer. He gave great bonuses, paid for catered lunches, and treated his staff well. I never had any reason to suspect anything shady going on between them, and to be honest, I still don't think they ever had a physical affair. But what happened next was almost worse. Around 9 months ago, Sarah came home from work looking visibly excited. She poured us 2 glasses of wine, sat me down on the couch, and said, "You're not going to believe the opportunity Richard just offered me." She told me that Richard and his wife had been struggling with fertility for years. They had tried IVF multiple times without success, and their previous surrogate arrangement fell through at the last minute due to a legal issue. Richard apparently knew Sarah had easy pregnancies in her family history, respected her work ethic, and out of nowhere asked her if she would be willing to be a surrogate for him and his wife. I was stunned. But then Sarah dropped the real bomb. Richard offered to pay her $500,000. $500,000. He offered $100,000 up front upon signing, monthly stipends, full medical coverage at the top clinic in the state, and the remaining $400,000 after delivery. Sarah was glowing. She said, "Slay, think about what this means for us. We can pay off our entire mortgage, upgrade our cars, and set up a massive college fund for our future kids. It's purely medical, completely legal, and it changes our lives overnight." I listened, but every instinct in my body was screaming. I told her, "Sarah, this isn't just a job. You're talking about carrying a baby for 9 months for your direct boss. The power dynamic is completely messed up. Beyond that, watching you go through a pregnancy, carry a child, and deal with all the emotional and physical toll for another man is something I am not emotionally comfortable with. This will destroy our intimacy and strain our marriage." We argued for weeks. It was the worst fight of our lives. I tried explaining that bringing $500,000 into our lives wouldn't mean anything if our marriage crumbled in the process. I even suggested we go to couples therapy to talk it through with a professional. She went to one therapy session with me, but she was completely closed off. During the session, when the therapist gently asked her to consider my feelings on marital boundaries, Sarah snapped. She looked right at me and said the sentence that permanently broke something inside me. "At the end of the day, it's my body and my choice. You don't get to veto what I do with my health or how I choose to secure our financial future." I was crushed. I told her, "You're right, it is your body and it is your choice. But choices come with consequences. If you sign that contract, you are choosing that money and your boss over our marriage." 2 weeks later, without telling me, she signed the legal paperwork, received the upfront $100,000 wire transfer into a private account she opened, and began the IVF embryo transfer process. When I found out, I was devastated. I didn't yell, I didn't throw a fit. I just felt completely detached. I told her I wanted a legal separation. I moved out of our master bedroom into the guest room, and a month later I leased an apartment across town and moved my stuff out while she was at work. I retained a divorce attorney. When Sarah received the initial separation papers, she was furious. She called me repeatedly, saying I was being selfish, immature, and that I was abandoning her during a time when she needed support. But I held my boundary. I didn't interfere with her life, but I completely pulled myself out of it. We barely spoke for the next 6 months, except through texts regarding split bills and our lease termination. Then, about 3 weeks ago, my phone exploded with calls and messages from Sarah, her mother, her sister, and even her father. It turns out, the dream deal completely imploded in the most catastrophic way possible. Apparently, Richard's wife found out that Richard had secretly drafted an additional private agreement with Sarah behind her back, specifically involving extra financial perks and long-term clauses that his wife never approved of. On top of that, Richard's wife suspected Richard was grooming Sarah, leading to a massive, explosive blowout between the couple. Richard's wife filed for a high-conflict divorce and frozen all of their joint assets. When Richard got slapped with the divorce papers and realized his fortune was on the line, he panicked. To protect his legal standing in the divorce, his attorneys advised him to sever all ties and cut off all unofficial financial obligations that weren't rock solid under state surrogacy laws. Since the surrogacy contract had several legal loopholes regarding breach of conduct and marital consent, since I never signed off on it as her spouse, Richard's legal team officially voided the contract and revoked all future payouts. To make matters worse, Richard fired Sarah from her job as his assistant to clean house for his corporate reputation. So, where does that leave Sarah? She is currently 7 months pregnant with Richard's biological child. She has no job, no health insurance, since it was tied to her employment, no $400,000 payout coming, and the $100,000 initial payment she received has been almost entirely eaten up by legal fees trying to fight Richard's lawyers, high-end private prenatal care she had booked, and living expenses. Richard has completely ghosted her, communicating only through high-powered lawyers who are tying her up in legal red tape. Last Sunday, Sarah's parents asked to meet me at a local diner. I agreed, thinking they wanted to discuss the logistics of our ongoing divorce process. Instead, it was a full-blown intervention. Her mother was in tears. Her father looked desperate. They begged me to come back home to Sarah. Her father said, "Son, we know Sarah made a huge mistake. She was naive and blinded by the money, but she is stressed out, pregnant, and facing medical bills and unemployment alone. She needs her husband right now. You need to step up, put your pride aside, move back in, and help her cover the living expenses and delivery costs until we figure out the legal stuff with Richard." Her mother added, "You pledged to be there in good times and bad. How can you turn your back on your wife when she's carrying a baby and drowning?" I sat there, looked them both in the eye, and said, "With all due respect, Sarah made an adult decision as an independent woman. She explicitly told me, my body, my choice, when I begged her not to do this. She chose $500,000 and her boss's wishes over our marriage. She didn't want my input then, so she doesn't get my financial or emotional support now. That child is not mine. The medical bills are not mine. The situation with her boss is not mine. Not my baby, not my problem." Her father slammed his hand on the table and called me a heartless, cold-blooded coward. They stormed out, and ever since, my phone has been spammed by her family and mutual friends calling me cruel, petty, and malicious for abandoning a pregnant woman in crisis. Sarah texted me a long, weeping paragraph yesterday saying she realizes now how much she messed up, that she regrets ever listening to Richard, and that she's terrified of having this baby, alone without financial stability. Part of me feels a tiny flicker of pity, because it's a terrifying situation for anyone to be in. But a much bigger part of me remembers how easily she brushed off my feelings, my boundaries, and our marriage for a paycheck. I am continuing with the divorce proceedings, and my lawyer is making sure I'm completely insulated from any financial liabilities regarding this pregnancy. So, Reddit? Am I wrong for completely walking away and leaving her to handle the mess she created? That is one wild situation. What do you guys think? Is he totally justified for enforcing his boundary after being completely ignored? Or should he have stepped up to help his wife out of a crisis? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another Reddit story update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.